Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to another episode of the Nothing for Nothing Leaves Nothing podcast. I'm your host, Lewis, and today's topic, Hive Mind. Let's talk about it. All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the podcast. And like I said, today's topic, we're going to talk about hive mentality. So, what is the definition of a hive mentality? All right, let's look at it. Hive mentality, also known as groupthink, is when a person has a strong tendency to fall for group decision making. Interesting thought. Then we have this breakdown of it. What do we mean by a hive mind? The collective thoughts, ideas, and opinions of a group of people, such as internet users, that's in quotation marks, I guess you could say, regarded as functioning together as a single mind. So the reason I want to talk about this topic is if you look at society as a whole today, right, there's a lot of things where people are no longer thinking for themselves, whether it comes to political views, whether it comes to normal functions in life, or just the craze of social media. And it makes you sit there and wonder, what happened to people being individuals? Like, what happened to it? There was a time years ago, I know at least when I was growing up, that you were able to be your own individual person. You had your own thoughts, your own views, your own mindset. Nowadays, it seems like everybody wants to function as one, or if not so much function as one, you want to go with what the status quo is across the board. Whether that's the latest craze on TikTok or social media, or whether it's a group mindset about a situation, about things going on. Nobody's there to think for themselves like they used to. And it always begs the question for me now when I look at things, and it's like, what happened? We all know in the world or in life, as time goes on and things progress, people and things change. People develop their own mindsets, cultures develop different things are brought to fruition that wasn't known before, and things are broken down and viewed in different aspects and different viewpoints, which is fine, right? That's how we continue to grow. That's how we develop. But at one point, at what time does it become critical to people losing their individuality? I say that in, like I just mentioned, things on social media that become a craze or wave, or people going viral. For example, people go viral nowadays for the weirdest stuff, right? That would take somebody from being a nobody to now they're known all over the world in literally an instant. Growing up back in the day years ago, what was the breakdown for people as you came up and went through life, right? You were told to go to school. Obviously, listen to your folks. It's a start. But you were told to go to school, get your degree, or get some kind of skill or trade, and then that's how you would form a career and you would go through and live your life. And it's like now that whole concept has gone away and gone by the wayside. Where it's like a lot of people don't want to go to school because when you go to school, you incur a debt that you end up paying for. For some folks, depending on what they went to school for, what the situation is, they end up paying for that for a good chunk of their adult life. So people tend to lean on not going to school or finding other ways to go to school without having to pay for it. Or just leaving that whole concept altogether and going directly straight to how can I make money fast? How can I become famous? People are so obsessed now with the world around them or the world of perception. And I say the world of perception because if you look at things on social media, everything is perception. A lot of times they've done documentaries and studies on this too, which elaborates on that fact of the things you see on social media are not real. Some of it is, right? People are actually taking vacation. People are actually doing things and seeing stuff and exploring the world and going out and experiencing different things. However, that is not an opportunity that is available for everybody. And that's just based off a circumstance, right? A financial stance, how you're going through life and what things you got going on around you. But people see that and somebody will look at that on social media and is like, oh man, this person's living the best life. Then you turn around and you look at the suicide rates skyrocketing, right? All over the place. People are depressed. People are not doing the things they used to do. They're not interacting. and things of that nature. Why? It's because people are formed into this hive mentality of whatever they see or whatever the general consensus is for whatever topic or whatever situation is, that's what everybody goes with. Nobody ever stops to think now like they used to and question, why is this particular thing this way? Why is this the mindset? Why is this the way that everybody wants to follow? What happened to individuality? What happened to you being your own person? What happened to you establishing things for yourself and looking at stuff and being like, okay, this is my viewpoint on it and this is where I stand. Now, there are people out there that do stand 10 toes down on whatever topics or views that they have. But if you look at society as a whole, especially right now and the way things are going, it is crazy at the amount of people that do not take time and develop their own thought process, right? And you think about that and it's like, how can people in the world go through life and not think for themselves? Everything that they do is based off of something that they're seeing on social media or, like I said, whatever the general viewpoint and consensus is. If you're looking at a situation where, because everybody is obsessed with celebrities, so I'll use that as the catalyst for an example. People look at celebrities and they're like, oh man, the celebrity was doing this, their life was so great, and then the person, either they're in a relationship and they cheat, or it's a situation where somebody gets a DUI, or from a spiritual standpoint, you look at spiritual leaders, right? Spiritual leaders are still human, but people place them on such a high pedestal that people forget the fact that they're a human. Now, that doesn't excuse bad behavior, whether it's molesting a child or cheating or whatever the situation or the scandal may be. But you have to remember that these people are still human. Yeah, they may be anointed, but they're still human beings. You are prone to make mistakes. You're prone to do things that are not right. Nobody in this world is perfect. Only, the big man upstairs is a person that's perfect. And it like this deity mindset that people have, and it's just like in droves, right? Everybody will flood to one particular side of the fence and then they will stand 10 toes down. And there is no budging. If you are against that person or you do not agree with what their thought process is, then you're wrong. And to me, that's like, how is society supposed to function if people can't be an individual? How is society supposed to function and grow if people can't disagree? You should be able to sit down and have a conversation with somebody and be able to disagree on a particular topic and subject and it not go nuclear, right? Especially if you think about it. The past couple of years, we've had big outpours and movements. Black Lives Matter movement, the big focus on police brutality. Then you had President Trump doing the things that he was doing, the stuff that he was saying, and the things that he was igniting when it's pretty much looking and focusing on one particular base. And that base, like I said, a hive mentality, right? Or everybody from that particular base was zoned in on, hey, he said, let's make America great. What does that mean? All right, that means they want to go back to the times where one group was seen in one light and the other groups were seen in a not so great light. And it just incited, and things were crazy. Then you go to the police brutality things and you look at that whole mindset, right? If you look at a breakdown for police, and I'll use my experience with it. I've had the experience with police where it was bad. I've had experience with police where it was good. Growing up, when I played football, I played for the Police Athletic League in Jersey City, New Jersey. Most of our coaches were police officers, right? It was ran by the police. That was the program, Police Athletic League. So we were around cops all the time. You didn't really get an experience of dealing with police brutality and a negative connotation with cops until you got older. Now, that doesn't mean that police brutality and stuff like that wasn't going on during that time, but it wasn't broadcast or it wasn't made a streamline like it is in today's world. And if you look at it, it's like the way the world is functioning right now, which is one of those things where I'm like, people should really start to stop and think and ask these questions, is whatever is the hot topic or the main focal point of news where you can get the most views, most clicks. That's what it goes to. What happened to the real stuff, right? What happened to people actually doing their due diligence, doing their research, doing their digging to get the actual facts on a situation? I've seen things. I mean, and you anybody can go through and you can just Google search stuff and just look at the comments, right? Read the comments on social media. That's a clear space when I talk about people having a hive mentality. People, when it comes to, and it's like so many different topics that you can get into. So this podcast is kind of broad. So just kind of giving my thoughts on it. But even if you look at things when it comes to interracial relationships, that always becomes a hot topic, right? And it always becomes a hot topic right around the time where if there's, I'll use the NFL draft when it came up. Just scrolling social media and you will see people, especially because predominantly the folks that play in the NFL are black, right? So you see a black guy with a white girl, a black guy with a woman that's not black. And everybody's like in the comments going bananas. Legit going bananas. And it's like, oh man, that's messed up. They just throwing these black women to the side. They don't want nothing to do with their race. They're a disgrace and all this kind of stuff. Right? And it's like, you can get it in a sense. But at the same time, you're like, why are you so focused on what somebody else is doing? That's the main question. In today's world, everybody's focused on what someone else is doing. How about focus on yourself? How about if you wasn't paying attention to what everybody else is doing and how people are living their life, you would be able to live your life. You would be able to experience things. You would be able to have moments in your life. The biggest thing that you see now, and it trips me out, and I don't care where you go or what you're doing. If you go to a restaurant, the folks that listen to this podcast, the next time you are out, take a walk somewhere. Take a walk somewhere to a park or an area where there's a lot of people moving around. Sit down and watch. I think one of the funniest things to do is to people watch. And the reason I say that is when you sit there and people watch, it gives you a good sense of where the world is. You watch how many people walk around on their cell phones. How many people won't put their phones down. How you can go to a restaurant, sit down and eat, and you will literally see people, usually folks that look like they might be on a date or some kind of social thing going on, and they're both on their phones. So it's like, I did a podcast talking about relationships and, talking about that first stage of relationship, which is the first date and going through that whole process or whatever. And it's like, how do you get to know somebody if the time when you're supposed to be interacting, you're sitting there on your phone? It makes no sense. It makes no sense. But it gives you that cause for pause. When you're sitting there, you're like, just take a step back. Disconnect. I would say one of the fun things about when I was in the military, which was always cool, was anytime you went out to the field or you did some kind of extensive training or something like that, you had times where you had you couldn't use your cell phone. Phone was put away because of either what was going on throughout the day and all that kind of stuff, or if you had your phone, you was gonna have an opportunity to charge it, so it was gonna go dead anyway, so you didn't want to mess with it. And look what happens. Guys are sitting around talking to each other, guys are conversating. You are building relationships, you're building camaraderie. You are establishing and getting to know your fellow brethren. Easy and as simple as that. And you're doing that because you're not sitting there distracted, looking at other things on your phone and dealing with all that stuff. And it's like, man, if you look at that and it's like, break it down. Like, how much time do people actually spend on their phones? A lot. People lose their people. It's like, if you're looking at the world now, what I'm seeing, it just blows my mind. It's like people are losing their individuality. Nobody knows who they are anymore. Because they're literally focused on what everybody else is doing instead of focusing on themselves. There's nothing wrong with taking a person and then looking at that person and saying, man, I would love to strive to be on a level as that person, right? Now, there's a fine line between having envy and using that as something as a goal or something to obtain. Years ago, when you grew up, the person you looked at, and this is going way back when, if you want to go even further back then, people used to look up to their parents. That was your focus. It wasn't a celebrity or an athlete. People look at their parents like, man, I want to be just like my dad. Girls like, I just want to be just like my mom. In a sense of that person was stable. They were doing things. They were showing you things. They were that true guiding force, that staple in your life to be like, this is a central point of something that you should shoot to obtain. There's nothing wrong with that. And it's like, in today's world, it's like that's lost. Not 100%. I'm not blanking on everybody and saying it's 100% lost. But if you sit there and look at it, just look at that breakdown. Look at the social media focus. Look at the political atmosphere. Look at just social media as a whole. It robs people of individuality. Everybody wants to be what somebody else is, as opposed to people taking the time and developing who they are and who they want to be for themselves. And it's a trip. I always tell my daughter when she's sitting here, my daughter's 4. Tell her all the time, be your own person. Be a leader, don't be a follower. Make your own decisions. Now, telling that to a 4-year-old, that can be very dangerous because my daughter is the type that you say something to her, she remembers it, and she will spit it back in your face in the weirdest times. And you're like, all right, well, shoot myself in the foot for that one. Kind of left that one open. But literally think about that. Next time, for the folks listening to this, next time you're around friends, family, a social gathering, whether you're at work or whatever, just watch. Sit down, watch, and observe. Look how many people are on their phones. Look how many people are not engaging or fully engaged in a conversation. How many times have you been talking to somebody, trying to have a conversation with them, and they're sitting there on their phone, flickering or scrolling through? Now, if somebody's answering a text message or something like that, yeah, you can consider that a little rude at times too, depending on who they're texting back. But if you think about that, you're looking and you're like, man, that's a trip. It will blow your mind. I work in a warehouse and I see it all the time. They call break, and literally before people even make their way off the floor, the phone is in their hand. How many accidents have you seen? I remember years ago, Pokemon Go, when that thing came out. Once again, Hive mentality. It came out, people talked about it, and then everybody was playing Pokemon Go. Older folks, young folks, people in the middle. It just became this thing. Everybody had to do it. You did it because this person was doing it. That person did it because that person was doing it, and so on and so forth. And it just kept going on. And what happened? People lost themselves. People were walking in the middle of the street getting hit by cars because you were trying to catch Pokemon on your phone. Like, think about that. Like, where's the logic in that? Where's the sense of being around? You look at now, 4th of July just passed. And what happens on the 4th of July? Everybody does fireworks, right? When I was a kid, you see fireworks, it was the greatest thing in the world, right? Fireworks is going off, it's loud, it's popping, it's colorful, and you were just like, wow, fireworks, man, this stuff is cool. You're like, man, this is great. Great experience. If you sit back and look now, where's the experience? You cannot go to an event, a show, anything, and people do not stay in the moment. Live in the moment, people. That's what I'm saying. Live in the moment. Become your own individual and live in the moment. When I say live in the moment, people, like I said, they go to an event and stuff is going on. It's a great experience. And what are people doing? People are literally live streaming it, videoing it, or whatever they're doing. But you're not in the moment. Like, how can you say you're in the moment enjoying it if you have a device in your hand and that is your sole focus? Oh, gotta catch this. Oh, gotta capture this. Gotta capture this. Nowadays, people vlog their whole life, right? From what they get up, they eat in the morning, all this kind of stuff. And why do people do that? It's because there are people out there that don't live a life. They just live vicariously through other people. It trips me out. Like, I don't understand it. I don't get it. I really don't. And it's like, what in the world is going to happen to our society? There was a monk that came out I don't know if it was recently or further back, and he talked about depression. And he was like, in the years and years past, when obviously before all this technology stuff was developed and stuff like that, you didn't hear a lot of stories of people being depressed. Most of the times you did, and people were having some kind of issue, people thought usually the person was possessed or had some kind of bad spirit or something like that, which, depending on how you look at it, that can play a part in it too. But he talked about everybody had something to do, in the sense of everybody was active, right? You were actively doing something, whether if people were working on farms or whatever the case may be, everybody was active doing something. For kids, kids were out there playing, interacting with each other, doing stuff. Parents were working, moms were taking care of home, dads was working, whatever. Everybody had their individual stuff that they were doing. Now, does that mean that people weren't dealing with things at that time? It's hard to sit there and say that they weren't, but I'll use the black community for example, like mental health, right? People, most guys, especially African American men, are not prone to sit there and talk about their mental health when they're having an issue. So if something's going on, as you grow up, you just taught to push through, right? It's a sign of weakness. You don't want to show weakness. If you look now, this is, I would say, one of those things where that focus and people kind of finding their own individuality and not being stuck in those certain traditions and mindsets is now you get folks that will address their mental health, right? Especially as a male. Sometimes, man, you need a break. Sometimes stuff gets to you where you don't know how to deal, right? And instead of sitting there crumbling from the pressure, not taking care of yourself, what do? You go seek help. You know, sit down. You might have to sit on the couch and talk to somebody. Let somebody know what your feelings are. Let somebody know what you experienced as a young child that played a part into how you're living and how you're feeling now. I don't see nothing wrong with that. I went through it last year where I was seeing a counselor, working out a lot of my issues. There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with sitting there and as an individual looking at yourself and examining yourself and identifying the things with yourself that might need to be corrected, might need to be fixed, might need to be worked on, or if it's stuff that you're doing that you see is working for you, improving on that and continuing to go forward. But staying away from this hive mentality of everybody has to be one way. Everybody has to think one way. Everybody has to look at things the same way. That's not an individual. That's not how we should live our lives. And the fact that people do live their lives that way, amen, more power to you. I would say at some point you need to disconnect. Everybody at some point should be able to disconnect from social media and just drop it. Leave it alone. Don't mess with it. Don't touch it. Leave it alone. Hell, go to a park. Go for a walk. You know, go do something with friends where you guys can actually interact with each other and you're not sitting there touching or messing with your phones. Do it. Enjoy life. Life is short, man. You can be here today and gone tomorrow. Why waste it? Sitting on your phone, twiddling your thumbs. Right? Looking at other people live life. Looking at other people experience things. Looking at other people or form their own opinions. Politics, right? If you look at politics, you're either on one side or the other. Why not sit there as an individual and look at both sides and then decide, okay, this side might have some qualities that you like. This side might have some qualities that you like. And then you make a decision based off of what you feel as an individual is the best decision for you. Not going with the general consensus of, well, everybody said they're going to vote for this guy because of this. If everybody's voting for my guess, I'll just do that. What is that? You're not being an individual. You just following. You're just being a follower. Just following the flow. Just rolling with whatever everybody goes with. And then that's when you end up having issues where, like from a political standpoint, you follow the flow. Everybody votes for this person gets elected, and then this person does nothing that you feel is conducive to what your political viewpoints are, what your thought process is, and so forth and so on. And everybody's like, well, dang, man, like, this is kind of messed up, dude. Like, this person ain't worth nothing. Well, why is that? Because you didn't do your due diligence. You wanted to follow what everybody else said instead of doing your process, going through your process, and looking at and doing things as an individual as opposed to being part of a group. So I say in closing, hive mentality is there. People be aware of it and be an individual. It's just as simple as that. Thank you guys for listening to the podcast. We are on multiple platforms: iTunes, Spotify, iHeartRadio, and YouTube. We may be looking at going live on YouTube at some point. So, as you listen, share it with your friends, share it with family members. Just continue to share, like, and subscribe. Let's try to grow this base. Let's try to get it to the point where we can be a little bit more interactive and see where we can take this thing. This is Lewis signing off, and I will catch you guys on the next go around. Have a good one.